Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dynamis Pod. This is Robert, and this evening I am joined by Mr. Ryan Ransom. Ryan, if you would, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
I'm an automotive instructor at Coloma High School in Coloma, Michigan. It's right in the southwest corner of the state, just about 45 minutes from the Indiana state line. So we're also right on Lake Michigan. So we've got, the big lake over there making snow on us in the winter and keeping our summers a little cooler.
Yeah.
I
How long
started,
have you been there?
I have been there I finished my 21st year at Coloma this year.
Very nice. That's a long time to be teaching. That's good.
So I started as a GM tech. I did work in an independent before that, but it was unpaid. It was more of a find out if it was interesting to me while I was a youth, and I'll talk more about that later. Started as a GM tech, then I transitioned into a Chrysler dealer, and from there into teaching. I taught at a local career center as a more of a paraprofessional initially, and then went to full on teaching at Coloma High School after I'd been at the other place for a little while. So
Very good. Can you let the audience know a little bit about what type of certification that it takes to become a teacher in this industry? And then also maybe speak a little bit to the ASE process as far as getting ASE certified. And you can really stick with just A1 through A8 if you'd like to.
So to teach in the state of Michigan, you have to have one of several things. First of all, you have to be ASC certified in at least, I think it's 4 areas to teach an MLR
Mhm.
program. And I can't remember which 4 it is. I've had 8 for so long that
Right.
I don't remember exactly
Now, when you,
which ones it is.
not to cut you way off, but when you say MLR, what does that mean? Is it Michigan licensed?
No, maintenance and light repair, which is an
I
accreditation
gotcha.
level of ASC for automotive programs. Most high school programs are MLR. Most even career
Okay.
centers, a few career centers will try to do MAST or AST, but generally there's not enough hours to pull that
I
off.
see.
So you can teach more than what you're accredited for.
Okay.
So oftentimes it's recommended that you be accredited at the MLR level. If you want to teach most of AST and you have the hours with some of your students to do that, then that's fine. That's okay. And it doesn't really change the education that the kids get because they get whatever you're able to have time to teach them.
Sure.
So you have to have at a minimum that you have to have 4,000 hours of recent experience within the last 10 years. And then you can start teaching. And then you have to work on getting a teaching degree and a CTE
Sure.
accreditation or CTE certification through the state in the state of Michigan. Now, each state's a little different in how that works. So this just really
Mhm.
speaks to Michigan, doesn't necessarily speak to any other state. When it comes to high school level, we're talking about high school level, not necessarily community college or anything beyond that.
Post-secondary.
It is a little
Yeah,
different.
private school.
Private
Now,
schools
does
can,
Michigan have, do they have like a licensing for the technician themselves? Like in PA here, we have like the emissions test that you gotta take that they really want you to take, then you gotta have the safety one. Do you guys have the same thing in Michigan?
so Michigan doesn't have an emissions testing license. What we have is an actual mechanics license. So
I see.
around the same time that ASE came about, I think actually a little before, because I think Michigan was somewhat of the impetus for ASE. Because
Okay.
ASC's impetus, from what I understand, looking at the history of it, was the government was getting involved and saying, "Hey, we got to have some kind of certification or accreditation or proof of knowledge for
Some type of
technicians."
competency.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
state of Michigan came up with a test, a written test,
Okay.
and they made it the law that to to work on vehicles, transportation vehicles, it
Mhm.
covers automobiles. There's 8 tests for automobiles. There's I think 5 tests for heavy trucks, and there's some transport bus tests. That's like your
Yeah.
bus mechanics, whether they're working on commuter buses or school buses.
Yeah, school.
Yeah, and then for automotive, which I think is where it started, was automotive. There's 8
I
areas,
believe
just
you're
like
right.
ASC. the same 8 areas. And you have to be licensed in the areas. Well, you're supposed to be licensed in the areas that you work on. I know that isn't enforced very evenly across the state. I know there's guys that are licensed in one area, like brakes, but work on everything.
Right.
I also know of shops that don't have licensed technicians. They play this game of they hire and fire and put them on training
Exactly.
permits and all this stuff and play games. But yes, Michigan
It seems
does.
like it seems like the state already has enough things on their plate, and they probably don't have the manpower to really police something like that.
Well, they used to police it better. When I
Sure.
started, so in the 90s, when I was in high school, in my high school automotive program, I took 5 state licenses. They offered them right at the school. So you get done with like you get done with your electrical class, you take the electrical test. You got done with your brakes class, you took the brakes test. And I took them and I passed the 5. Wasn't terribly difficult, I didn't think. Uh, I guess I'm wrong about that. But I do read really well. So I think that helps a lot with
Sure.
testing.
I'd agree with that,
Yeah,
definitely.
reading and comprehension are critical for this industry, not just for testing, for reading
Exactly.
service information and all these other
For
things.
safety's sake.
Yeah, because I mean, look at ADAS. There's all this stuff you're supposed to read. Don't do these things. If you take this apart, you have to calibrate it. Well, if you never read it, you don't know about it. But that's off topic. So the state licensing was, I think, enforced better back in those days. I remember a state police officer coming to the dealership where I worked, and
Mhm.
he was doing an annual check or something. He came in.
Spot check.
Yep, and I don't know if he was checking all the dealers in the area or all the shops in the area, or what he was doing, because I just
Sure.
saw him come in, and I asked my boss, the service manager, "Hey, what's he doing?" 'Cause he went over to the wall of certificates, and he was writing
Mhm.
stuff down. Well, he's checking to see if all the technicians who are working on more than minor repairs you could do tires, shocks, and oil changes, and some other minor services without having a license.
I got
We
you.
keep calling it certification, but technically it's a license. It's if you look on the list of licenses on the licensing and regulatory page for the state,
Mhm.
it's listed as a license. It's a
I
license
got you.
to do work for
Sure.
revenue.
Along the same lines of, like, somebody that's licensed to sell insurance in the state, somebody that's got a nail license to do that or
Yep.
cosmetology, those types of things, right?
It's
Yeah.
exactly the same kind of a process as a general contractor's license, an HVAC mechanical license, hairstylist license, a barber license. There's a test you take. You have to Well, I don't know that for automotive, they don't really seem to look into whether or not you have any experience. They recommend that you get training
Sure.
as, but I think anybody can really go take the mechanics test. That's one
Mhm.
failing of it, I think. But there's different trains of thought on that too, like where you
Sure.
learn. I don't have a problem.
I think I think at the minimum, you should have some type of apprenticeship because, like, this country came up through a lot of apprenticeships. So at the very minimum, you should at least have the younger guys, younger ladies coming up through the system actually being able to show some competency to those people that are their peers inside of that system,
I
at the
agree.
very least.
Hmm. Right.
And the things that I've done for 32 years, 31 years. So it's like, there has to be some other way necessarily to get people into the industry because not everyone's able to do the route through school. But on the same hands, I mean, it just can't be anybody that walks up and says, "Hey, I'm giving you my money now. I want to go take this test."
Hmm.
That doesn't really help anyone either.
No, it doesn't. And I will say the tests are difficult enough if you
Hmm.
don't understand the concepts and weren't taught them, or and how you learn. I run the ASC certified technicians group on Facebook, and I've been given I'm not the founder of it. I'm just the guy who jumped in to help the founder when things were getting a little bit wild with
Sure.
spammers. And because I knew how to run
Yes. Yeah.
a Facebook group, I've done it for a nonprofit and I had some ideas and it worked. We've got a pretty good group
Mhm.
running over there. But guys will,
Yeah, I see you in there quite a bit having to police a little bit because, like, people like to talk a little bit too much. Because, like, when people sign up to go take the test, they literally sign an affidavit.
yep,
So,
exactly.
like, you sign up, like, you can't just share,
No.
like, what happened in there. You can't share like, you can share, like, the testing system.
Yeah.
"Hey, these are the things you can expect."
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell them the question that you just
No.
got and then the answer to it because some people got pretty good memory.
Yeah. Or draw the
So it's like, I
diagram that was,
see
no.
or draw the diagram that was on the test. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen that one too in there, and you're like, "Hey, look, you gotta go back and look at the notes and the rules of the group
Yeah.
and also what you signed
Yeah.
because you're not allowed to do that."
And
And
we,
that protects the integrity
yeah,
of the actual ASCs.
absolutely. And there's one of the things that I often will say on there is, or ask, more ask than say, is have you had formal education in this? And I don't necessarily mean did you go off to college or did you take it in high school? Formal could be you took training through a dealership, you went worked at an
Absolutely.
independent like at Christian Brothers where they sent you to training. You went and worked for
Internships, they used
Firestone
to do that.
and they sent you to training, or you were in some kind of a formal apprenticeship through your state. Like I know South Carolina has a formal apprenticeship program for automotive. Whatever it is, did you have some kind of formal training where somebody guided you and taught you things?
Yes.
And that I think is the biggest piece that's missing from this whole licensing and certification. And people like to dog on ASC certifications. Well, ask it somebody else, or what else is it they say they can? I know lots of guys that could pass the test but couldn't make a ham sandwich. Well, first of all, why are you asking a mechanic to make a ham sandwich? I mean,
Right. It's gonna be greasy anyways.
yeah, I mean, he might use gear oil instead of mayonnaise, but
I've eaten plenty of those in my day.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
But again, a written test has its limitations. We all know that. I use ASC certification for a couple purposes myself. And back to your question about what does a teacher need to have to teach it in Michigan? Well,
Mhm.
yeah, you got to have some ASC certifications. You have to. That is a requirement of being an automotive instructor. Now, they don't necessarily require every program to have ASC accreditation of the program anymore. They still require the instructors to be ASC certified. That's up to each individual advisory committee, whether or not they're accredited by ASE or by AvTech or somebody else. That changed last year. But in any case, the ASE certification piece, what I started in the dealership
Mhm.
as an apprentice. I was in a formal program called GM GM Youth Education
Okay.
System in the late 90s. So I actually, well, I guess technically it was the mid 90s because I signed the paperwork in 95, 96 school year. I actually went on the apprenticeship in the 96, 97 school year. But in any case, that program put me with a mentor, one. Two,
Exactly.
it put some requirements on the dealer principal to see that I went to training, see that I did the
Yes.
video training in the dealership, and that I was taking GM training along with what I was learning in the shop. So that was huge. I learned as much doing that and working with my mentor as I did in the school. I learned a lot of great things at the school from my instructors,
Right.
but being out there in the shop, and it was a small dealer, so I did a lot of everything. It wasn't just, I wasn't throwing on tires and oil change. They had an old guy for oil changes. I did occasionally
Mhm.
do an oil change, but usually it was because it was in for a recall or, something like that or
Yeah,
something
you were doing
else.
something else also.
Yeah. My first job, my very first thing I ever did, I remember the very first job I ever had at that dealership, 10 minutes after I rolled my toolbox into my bay on a Thursday afternoon, because my dad helped me bring the toolbox down. I didn't go to school that morning because I went in the morning to the tech center. I didn't go to the school so that I could bring my tools down. Got there just before lunch, put my tools in the bay, and the service manager came out and handed me a ticket for a tire
Yeah.
rotation and balance. And the
Yep.
mentor came over and he said, Get it racked and get started. You comfortable with a single post hydraulic rack? Yep. We have twin post hydraulic racks at the school, but this is similar. He says, you get it set, don't pick it up more than 6 inches and come get me. Okay.
Yep.
And he made
Yeah, and if
sure
you
I,
can follow those small instructions, then we'll move to the next steps, right?
yeah. And once he was sure I had it set correctly, he let me lift it. And then he kind of just asked me, how are you going to go about taking the wheels off? I told him, he says, all right, go ahead, go. He says, when you get all the wheels off, tell me what your process will be for rotation. So I did. And then he said, go. And once he was confident that I could do those things, then he took me in, showed me how their balancer worked.
Exactly.
And I did the balancing. I put them back on, and then I had to go test drive it. And that was hilarious because the service manager had brought it in. It was a stick shift.
Hmm.
I'd driven a stick shift one time in my life.
Now it was twice, huh?
Now it was twice as I out of,
Yep.
and of course the sales
Yeah.
guys were laughing at me. But by the time I came
Yeah.
back and made a couple loops around the block and went up the highway to make sure it would
It's
go
a pro.
smooth, I could drive it smooth. It was fine. But
Exactly.
that was my
So it was structured and it was supervised.
yes.
So, like, because that's a great system
Mhm,
where no one got hurt. You did what you were supposed to do. The car got finished for the customer. You had a mentor that was actually paying attention and doing what they're supposed to do. So that all works. Like you said, and that is an education. So, like with the back to the certification and the licensing. So you had brought up David Mackholtz's organization AvTech, and I was going to go there for a minute too because I think that my sense of that has changed a little bit. Like in the beginning, I'm like, okay, why? Because
mhm,
like there is ASC, and ASC is a giant, national thing.
right,
But then it's like, as I teach now, and I see, hands-on assessment really works well for being able to weed out and make sure people are competent. So I get why. So like my thing would be is a question to you that, kind of runs that group on Facebook. And that's where I see most of your information and things that you post is in there.
mhm,
It's like the question would be is like, do you foresee later? It's a tough question, it's hypothetical, but like, do you see ASC like eating up that organization and trying to do it themselves? Do you see them partnering with something like that? Are there more of those that pop up, nationwide? Because that's a difficult thing to try to get started because almost it's almost more manpower to do that part of it and have as many people that you can have them watch just like at Prometric where they watch over, there's cameras, they pay, make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's almost like that as a multiplication problem, if you get where I'm going with
mhm,
that. That's a lot of manpower that's going to have to be like watching people do this kind of stuff.
yeah.
Where do you see that going?
I think it's possible to do, first of all.
Sure.
I think
Yeah, I would agree with that.
in some areas of the automobile, it's critical that we
Hmm.
make sure that people know what they're doing before they're doing. Because, and I'm not just talking about ADAS. ADAS is the canary in the coal mine.
Sure.
But
And EV, I think,
yeah, and EV.
because it's a little more
Yeah,
dangerous, we
because
can say, because like it's a
yeah,
touch and then something really bad happens as opposed to, hey, I left a wheel loose or like I didn't put the drain plug back in. Those are more property damage, less
hmm,
less life problems. So
yeah. In general, I mean, so
mhm,
but the one area that I see a lot of shoddy work being done, stuff that comes into the school, like teachers will, I had my car, fixed, and I'm not throwing other shops under the bus here. I'm not going to name any names of any shops. I know
mhm,
some of the shops that shouldn't be doing work. They're not. They're actually none of them are right in the community where I teach.
right.
But these
And they're
people,
always going to be out there. It's a matter of
exactly.
like making that a smaller margin, right?
Yeah. So I see brakes as one of the biggest, probably the first area that I think needs to be addressed, in that there's a process you should be using when you're doing brakes. Like when you're
Sure.
taking off a caliper and putting it back on, if you're not pulling those pins out, making sure everything's free, and either replacing the pins or cleaning and greasing everything and putting new boots on and sandblasting or filing the abutment grooves. Now, those guys that are down in the south, they're not going to understand what I'm talking about. But those of us that worked in the Rust Belt know rust jacking is a huge problem, and it jams the
Mhm.
pads, and then you
Yes.
get weird wear and one pad wearing more than the other,
Yeah, the
and
pad can bow, the backing can bow a little
mhm,
bit, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
overheat the discs, and then you got hard spots. I see hard spotting more than I see, like, people talk about rotor warp. I don't Thickness variation and hard spotting are the two issues that I see the most. We test for that. I make the kids We have a scribe. We run it, scratch a scribe on the disc. If you got spots where it skips over, that disc is junk. It's hard spot. Even if you can't see color variation, scribe will tell you the story. The other thing is testing the surface with a dial indicator. It doesn't take very long with a magnetic to set it
No,
up.
it don't.
You clamp that wheel with, some lug nuts, or that hub with some lug nuts so it's tight, and then you spin it before you disassemble it. Because if you don't,
Yes.
now if you've got a problem and you take those off and then you don't clean that hub, so like I said, those areas I think need to have some hands-on. Now I don't know how it's going to happen to make it work,
Sure.
because I mean, can we send every technician that we have in the industry? Let's say we sent everybody B and below off to be evaluated. Okay,
Certainly.
that might not be reasonable, but is it reasonable that a shop or several shops in an area could join together and have somebody get trained and then have them go through and accredit? The problem I
Right.
see, concern, I wouldn't necessarily call this a problem. It's a concern. It doesn't matter how well you try to set up a system like this, somebody's
Mhm.
going to try to circumvent it. Somebody going to try to
Absolutely.
s- to slip and slide
Human nature.
through the system. So
Yeah.
ASC has the problem of guys trying every study guide in the world to just pass the test. Uh,
Right.
I've never
I see
used.
that a lot in there in that
Yeah,
group. It's like, how do I pass this test,
yeah,
pass this test? And I've seen one today.
yeah,
Everyone's trying to explain it's understanding and experience that
yeah,
helps you pass that test.
yep.
It's not the guide or which one you go to or any of that. Cause I do the same thing. Like I have certain guides that I end up using straight off of ASC and then like the free ASC studyguides.com. I use all of those with our students to make sure that they have a great understanding. But what about Quizlet? I'm like, I looked at Quizlet before I went and took mine. It was trash. Whoever had put it on there, it really didn't help me any. So like if I can stop them from making the mistake of wasting their time on something that's
Hmm.
not actually going to help, like, and point them in the correct direction and let them go. Like, it's crazy, because there is so many things out there that are out there. But I see you always putting them right exactly in the same thing I end up telling them. Go back to the source, ASE. They have all the stuff on their own website. They're there to try to help you actually be able to pass those tests. But it's the understanding part, I think. And everybody always, it's human nature too. Like, I want it now.
Yeah.
I remember what it was like when I went to go take mine. I failed one and passed one.
Hmm.
I took A1 and I took A8. I passed A1. I had enough knowledge. I'd worked in a machine shop for a little while. I kind of understood the basics. And at A8, I was just, 4 or 5 questions off.
Hmm.
So I was kind of there.
Yep.
So I waited 6 months. Back then it was every 3 months they gave them.
Right.
And you had to wait 2 weeks to find out if you even passed the dang thing or not.
Yeah.
But, it's totally different now. It's like you find out before you even leave the lobby if you've
Yeah.
passed it or not.
So
But yeah, it's the guides and all that stuff is like everyone freaks out about the guides. I know I need the best one. Everybody's looking for a silver bullet.
there's
It's
not.
just hard work.
Yeah,
That's it.
there's no silver bullet. I do think that where some of the guides maybe can help somebody is if they have holes in their knowledge. But
Yes.
this is where, if you take that task list and you sit down with that
Yes.
task list, when I went to, and I'll back up here, and I guess you say it's
Hmm.
backing up, and I'll just talk for a minute about when I went to take my ASE test, the first ones. So
Hmm.
I left high school and I'd been doing this apprenticeship, and I told my instructors I'm not going to go to college. I remember saying that to them at the
Hmm.
end of the year event. And
Now look at you.
yeah, and the older of the two instructors, he said, "Well, just go try one. Just go try one
Hmm.
class. Go take air conditioning. They have that in the summer down at the community college, and you're going to be doing air conditioning." I could do that, I suppose. So I went and took a summer evening class in air conditioning down at the local community college,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the instructor. He's still an instructor. He's part time now because he's semi-retired, but and he teaches out in
Okay.
California now. But anyway, I took that air conditioning class, and then well, I ought to go take the ASE test for it because by that point I had enough time in school and enough time in the dealership to count
Sure.
for my experience on it. So I'll go take that test. So I went and took it and I passed right after I had completed the course. I'd
Mhm.
also gone off to a 2-day training class on air conditioning at Hinsdale at the GM Training Center too, during the
Mhm.
time I was taking the air conditioning class at the college. So that helped too because it kind of brought me up to speed on the whole R134A, and we were starting to use a refrigerant analyzer because people were putting R12 in the
Sure.
R134 systems, and yeah, to make
Yeah.
sure we weren't sticking the wrong.
Sniffer.
Yeah, we had a big
Yeah.
box that we mounted. I actually put it on our machine in the dealership when it came in, and you would hook the lines to it and then into the machine. So the gas went into it first. It would analyze
Sure.
whether it was R134A pure or if it had something else in it. If it had something else in it, the machine would divert it into a separate tank.
I got you.
So same
Yep.
thing they're doing now with
Yeah.
1234YF. But
I
anyway,
got a quick question, and
yeah,
I think it'd be illustrative of some of the problem. So when you went to do that training at the college, who paid for it and who paid you to go to it?
I paid for it. The
And no one
dealership,
paid you while you were there?
what's that?
No one paid you while you were there?
No, no.
You see where I'm going with that?
Huh?
Because a lot of people do not want to put in on
Yeah.
their own education.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge downfall because they think that someone else is supposed to pay for this. I'm showing up, I'm putting my own time into it, but someone else is supposed to pay for it.
Yep.
And that's not how it works.
Mm-mm.
Like there's tons of guys like you and me that worked after hours, whether they went to a class or not. Maybe they went home, they took a shower, they ate dinner, and then they opened up a magazine
Mhm.
and they learned about more things.
Mhm.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's
No, no, you're
it's
right.
illustrative of
You're
like
right.
what is going on in the industry sometimes.
You're right. So I had one ASE certification and I had the 5 state certifications, which I had electrical, engine performance, brakes, and
Probably
suspension.
chassis. Yeah,
Yeah, and engine mechanical.
sure.
So I'm in college, and one thing the college had a deal was, well, if you're ASE certified in an area, you can pay the ACE test fee and you don't have to take the class. Electrical
Okay.
was 2-tiered and engine performance was 2-tiered. Well, I didn't want to take the basic auto electrical one. I wanted to get into the second level because what I had learned in the high school program was pretty good, pretty comprehensive, I felt,
Yeah.
based on my,
Satisfied the first level.
yeah, I was like a sidestep to first level. So I went and took the electrical ASE, I took the engine performance ASE, and I passed them.
Mhm.
And was able to skip those classes. And then I took automatic transmissions, manual transmissions at the college. And then I went and took those 2 ASEs. Now, the state of Michigan recognizes ASE certification. So if you have ASE certification in a like area that they have a license in, you have ASE send them a letter, and then they will. Now it's all done electronically now, but back
Yeah.
then I had to write a letter to ASE to have ASE write a letter to the state.
You mean with a pen and paper?
Uh huh. Yeah.
Get out of
The
here.
state did have a form you could go get at the Secretary of State, though, that you could put in there that said all the things. All you had to do was sign your name at the bottom and put it in an envelope. So that I did do that. I didn't write the whole letter out, but
A life hack. I
yeah,
like it.
yeah. So anyway, because I was getting these ASEs, my state license was getting bigger, and
Sure.
I worked my way up to having what they call as a master automotive license, which means you got all 8 areas. And I know
Mhm.
people like to melt bellyache about master. I don't know what else you'd call it.
Yeah. That was all that there was. Like they came along with like A9 for like auto light truck diesel,
Mhm.
and I ended up getting that one too. But it's like, yeah, the first 8 was the 8.
Yeah.
That was all there was.
And, like, with the state of Michigan, they called it a master license before ASE even had all 8 to call it master. I think it was originally 5 or 6 for they didn't call it master, they had a different term for it back in the
Yeah.
I'm not old enough to rem
I'm saying it started out as like NIASE or something like
Yep.
that, or
Oh,
NIAS,
it's the National
and then it was,
Institute. Still
yeah, it
is.
was a national institute,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, it still is. They kinda like revamped all of it. I think it
Yeah.
was 72.
Yeah.
because I made that one of these little questions I always send to my class through the
Mhm.
message system on Blackboard. I'm like, hey, tell me about this, and I'll put something that's
Mhm.
false in there.
Yep.
So I'm looking to see if they have attention to detail when they read it, or if they're even interested enough to go look it up. And I put that it was in like 1973 or something like that. I put 1 year off.
Mhm.
They're like, oh yeah, I seen this, and this is what it is, and here's what it means. And I'm waiting and waiting, and only two people even answered it.
Mhm.
And I always use that as a opportunity to say, hey, you're going to do a lot of email messaging, internal messaging, Slack, whatever. Your service manager is probably going to talk to you through that, or your advisor is.
Mhm.
So you have to be first off, you got to be cognizant that's coming to you. So you got to be on the lookout for it. Then you got to be able to answer it promptly,
Yeah.
because it could be something interesting and that you really need to see. Then you have to read it with attention to detail.
Right.
They're like, oh, you know what? There is something wrong with that. And I'll wait a couple hours, and then they'll come to me and go, hey, I think it was 73, 72, and you put 73. I'm like, okay. I said, now keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody else.
Right.
Let them figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So slowly I worked my way up to having when I went to work at the Chrysler dealer, I think I had 5 ASCs maybe, and by that point, because of how I had picked which ones I would get, I had
Hmm.
the master license for the state because I had filled in the 3 gaps that I had, which was automatic transmissions, manual transmissions.
How old were you at that point in your career?
I think I was 19 or 20. I
Okay.
graduated high
That's
school
good.
when I was 17,
Okay.
and I turned 18 that summer after I graduated. So I
Hmm.
hadn't been very long in the industry, but I started way back before I was in high school, when I was still a middle schooler. I started doing small engines and ripping them apart. And
Yes.
that's kind of going way back in the Wayback Machine, but that's what got me interested in mechanical things. And
Hmm.
I took a mail order course in small engine repair, and I started my own business. And
Correspondence course?
uh-huh, huh. They
Holy
shipped me
cow.
an
You're definitely
engine.
dating yourself now.
They shipped me
Did it
an
really?
engine. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I had to
Could you
take it.
imagine if we had that program now?
Yeah. I had to take it apart. I had to put it all back. I had to measure everything, put it all back together. I had to
Hmm.
run when I was done. And I remember I think we called them on the phone and they had to hear it start and run,
Yeah.
something like that. But it's kind of blurry. I still have the book and all the labs that I did because you would get the labs done, all filled out. You'd mail them in, then they'd mail them back to you with a certificate of completion for that section. When you got all done, you
Nice.
got a certificate to put on the wall that said you were certified. So
You got to post those somewhere at some point. That'd be pretty
yeah,
interesting for people
they're
to
hanging on the
see.
wall in my garage.
Okay.
But that's what got me started. So I've been working on stuff since I was like 10, like
Yeah.
mechanical stuff. I fixed my first small engine that didn't run right, that smoked like a banshee when I was 10, a little 5 horse Briggs and Stratton.
Yep.
And then,
Side shaft,
yeah,
horizontal
it
shaft,
was on a rototiller.
side shaft.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, horizontal
Yeah.
shaft. Yeah. So that I think leads you in a different direction. Matt Fanslow talks about his experience in the implement dealer on his podcast and how that set him up. And I believe that having a father that ran a small business that did painting and light renovation and did
Hmm.
woodworking and stuff like that, it was very hands on. And the fact that I got started so young working on mechanical things meant that when I was once I got to high school and into the dealership, it was like, okay, this stuff is just bigger. It's not any harder.
Exactly. Well, you're an advanced student at that point, and no one
Right.
really realizes it as you're
Yeah.
coming through, because you've seen them, I'm sure, in the high school level. Those kids that are doing the same things.
Hmm.
They have these hobbies. They're doing stuff at home. Maybe they're doing junior dragsters now, and that kind of thing has become a real
Yep.
big thing. But
Four
they
wheelers.
just kind of have it seems like they have a natural talent, but it's like that's what they've been interested in for years already. But by the
Yeah.
time they
Yep.
see you, so
Yeah. And sadly, those kids are fewer and far between compared to what they were. We can talk more about that later. But the I think that introduction to small engines led me to not have near as much concern about like when I did engine mechanical in high school, I was already ahead of the game. I was wanting to
Mhm.
be over here on the valve grinder, and putting in,
Right.
valve guides and stuff because the basics of just disassembling an engine, okay, it's got four cylinders instead of one or two, but it's still a four-stroke engine. Of course, I'd worked on
Exactly.
two-stroke engines too because I had boat motors and stuff. So, four-stroke gasoline engine was not a big concern in high school. Of course, we didn't have variable valve timing and all the other crazy stuff either. We did have
Yeah.
timing belts, which could be a pain in the neck.
Yeah, now they got wet ones.
Yeah,
I'm like, "What?
yeah,
What are they doing?" Like, "Oh, yeah, it's a wet belt." I'm
wet
like, "Okay.
wet belts and
I guess it's designed that way, so
it was
alright, whatever."
chains 7 miles long.
Yep.
Yeah, but so I was not very old when I hit the level of having a master license. Now, was I a master at everything? No,
Right,
and
that's what we always discuss as well. Yeah,
no,
it's just not how it works.
no, and I don't think even today. I'll say this right out, right now, and I don't think any technician out there should go around saying if let's say they've got all eight, they do all eight at the same level. Do, do you
Right, no,
rebuild
they don't.
transmissions and do full AC systems and on? In a one man shop, even, it's unlikely because there's going to be things that you're
Sure,
good at that you kind of key in on and people know, hey, he's really good at electrical. I'm bringing a lot of electrical work. Even the other shops in
exactly.
the area might send you stuff. And so I don't think anybody is ever really a master of everything. That's ridiculous. And with today's cars being as complex as they are, I really think that technicians need to be more focused on specific areas.
Yeah.
Having somebody in the shop that's
It's good to be a generalist, but you're right, there's a lot of this now is, like, way off the chain as far as, like, the way that these things are set up now, like you're saying. The complexity has become unbelievably
yeah,
more complex than it's ever been,
yeah.
and it's only getting more complex as it goes.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I would agree with that. Always use the topic of like the transmissions. So I've done some valve bodies. I've done a mechatronic unit on a Volkswagen once, that kind of stuff. Put my own shift kits in, some 700 R4s, but that does not make me a transmission guy. Like that's fairly basic. That's following some instructions. That's hey, it shifts when it hits second gear now.
Yeah.
But as far as like taking it apart, putting new clutches in it, change. I did change a governor one time on the turbo 350,
Uh-huh.
but even then, it's like that doesn't make me a master at that. I do have that as an ASE, but like
Right.
you're saying, it doesn't. There's no way that everybody could be 100%. Even guys that are world, like now that I've got as many as I have, I would love to go and get like 23. I think it is to get world.
Right.
That'd be amazing. But am I going to be a master? Like I still think like the word master is like way up here, and like we almost rarely ever really achieve that. So I always put that off as that's what I'm actually heading for. But I
Mhm.
don't know if you ever really achieve it. And like you said, they throw the word around a lot, but
I think
I don't make myself out to be better than anybody else in the industry because I have one. Who cares?
there's
You're
things that
only as good as what you just did.
that's right. You're as good as the last car that left your bay that didn't come
Yeah,
back with the same
exactly.
problem. I mean,
Yeah,
and
with the same problem. Yeah.
there's gonna be cars that beat you up. That's part of this industry. That's part of learning. But I was gonna say about ASC and master,
Mhm.
I guess we could probably put that to bed after that. But ASC certifications are the baseline of knowledge that a technician should have to be competent enough to work on cars. It doesn't mean that and this is where guys are like, I knew this master tech who couldn't do X. He didn't. I'm really good at doing transmissions, and he couldn't do transmissions. Okay, what part of transmissions are you doing? Maybe he's good at diagnosing the electrical hydraulic side and figuring out that hey, the problem's in the transmission. That's a shifting problem. That's not a misfire. And then he says it needs to have a transmission, and we send it over to the transmission guy to do that part. Or
Mhm.
is he good at doing the mechanical rebuild in the transmission, which really the test isn't about?
Right.
And I
There's a
guess,
lot of hypotheticals of other things like
yeah,
shifting stuff like you're saying, but it's not really the mechanics
it's
part of
more
it.
drivability of the transmission. Is the problem mechanical in the transmission? Is the problem electrical in the transmission? Or is it a hydraulic a valve issue in the transmission? That's really kind of the three things. Or is it some outside influence, a sensor, a speed sensor, a pressure sensor, that's making the transmission act up? And that's really
Hmm.
more what the test is about. But like I tell guys, this is not a test of whether that person is the ultimate genius of the 8 areas. It's a test of, are they competent at the level that they can work and make revenue and do reasonably decent work. No
Exactly.
technician that has all 8 areas, in my opinion, this is my opinion only. Maybe I'm wrong. I probably am. But no technician that has all 8 areas, and using the word no is dangerous, I know,
Hmm.
is going to be good at all 8 things at the same level. Just isn't possible. We all have our interests. Me, I like electrical and electricity because it follows rules. I like
Yeah.
drivability because it's a puzzle. Brakes and like putting together correctly a brake system and having that car stop smooth as glass when you're done, that is a good feeling. Do I want to be doing brakes every day, all day? No, I get bored out of my mind. But I do like the way it feels when it is done, or like when you get an alignment just perfect and you take the car out and drive it and it just feels right.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good feeling. But I don't want to be doing alignments all day long. Neither does my shoulder.
Exactly. Want to touch one thing on what you just said. You had mentioned task lists.
Yes.
So just to let you know, if there's students out there that are listening to it, uh, the task list has something that's very valuable on it, and that is how the questions are put together and
Mhm.
what they're actually asking you for.
Yep.
So, like, I always go through to it, like, hey, you need to like put your hand over the answers before you ever do anything.
Mhm.
Read everything,
Yep.
read it again, and then read it the third time because we're really apt to just reading over stuff and being like, oh yeah, I read that now, I know it. Like I was saying before we even went on, like, well, I read that, I highlight it, now I know it. No, you don't.
Mhm.
Like, you have to actually read it to understand it, not read it to just be reading it. And we too often do that when we're taking tests, especially. We don't use all of our time. We don't do like the things of reading the question, read it again, and then once you've read it a couple times and soaked it in, now look at the answers and using strike through. Strike through on the right hand side, strike the ones that don't really make sense out. Then now you've made it, it's a probability now at this point. Now it's like it went from 25%. If you strike two off, now it's a 50-50.
Yep.
Like it just went up a lot.
Mhm.
So then you could almost use just some deduction and some educated guess at that point, and that will get you way closer than actually anything else. But knowing how they're asked, knowing what to look for, and then doing that, and then the last one is don't leave anything open.
Mhm.
Do not leave any questions that are not answered. Even if you have to do abacadabra is what I used to call it, like A B, all the way down. Even if you have to do that to fill in the blanks after you're done flagging everything, you're still more probabilistic that you're going to actually get a better grade on. So like never do that. Never actually just, you know what, I'm done, submit. Oh, there's extra questions I didn't answer. Well, I can't answer them, so submit and watch the timer. Like that's really the only things that's there on that test.
Yep. I've helped with writing a couple of tests for the entry level on a writing team for ASC. And one thing I learned out of that, there's things I can't talk about, obviously, because we do sign an NDA, but I think I can say this. There is a there is one right answer on every question.
Yes.
Only one.
Yep.
There's no we're not writing questions trying to gotcha people. In fact, if you try to write a question like that, the rest of the team's gonna blow you out of the water because they get reviewed by the whole group and then they get put
Sure.
in a box file and they get reviewed again before they even get
Yeah.
to the psychometrician to get adjusted and made to work with the actual test. But the point
Certainly.
is, one answer is right, and that we work very hard to make sure that there's no possible way that any of the distractors, as they're called, or incorrect answers, the three incorrect answers, can possibly be right. Now, they could
Sure.
be right in some people's minds because some people don't understand the system in question, and that
Exactly.
is almost always the problem. Like even the questions when
Mhm.
I use the app now, the renewal app, and it has a lot of
Myself as well. Yep.
learning type questions on it to teach you new stuff. And there's things on there I don't know,
Mhm.
obviously, because
I
I'm
had
not.
it happen to me. I missed 2 on it.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
a master. Look,
yeah,
it's on the wall, I promise.
yeah,
But I did the same thing.
yeah. I'm not
And it's the same
directly.
thing. I didn't read it enough. Like, as soon as I seen it and I seen the answer, I'm like, "Oh god, I can't believe I just missed that."
Yeah.
This still happens to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get
It's
them all
wild.
right. I don't get them 100% right.
Uh,
So, and I don't, even like when I was taking the renewal or the research at the testing center, I used to go over to the local community college just up the highway from me because they have a testing center there, Prometric Center, right in the college, and I used to go there and take them. And I would go on a weekday, take a day off of work
mhm,
because I at the school, they're okay with that. Take a day off of work.
mhm,
I'd go over there. Take me about 5 hours to take 9 tests because the I had the 8 areas plus the maintenance and light repair,
mhm.
and I'd come out of there mentally exhausted,
Wiped out.
wiped
Yeah.
out. But I passed them, so I was okay. Now, did I pass them all at 100%? No. And I see
Very rare
guys
people
going,
pass with 100% anyways.
no. I see guys all the time back. Well, it's almost impossible, and I'll explain why in just a second.
Mhm.
Why passing with 100% is almost impossible. It's, but anyway, I see guys all the time saying, well, back in my day, you had to have 90% to pass an ASC. No, no,
Doesn't say I don't remember that.
no. And here's the reality: the cut score, you could make the cut score 100%, and that would just mean that nobody would pass the test. You get like one or two passes a year out of thousands of people, and it wouldn't tell you that other people weren't smart enough to actually work in the industry in any way, shape, or
Mhm.
form. The cut score, psychometricians like to make the cut score. I've read some books about, and I can't necessarily name them, but I found some books online about the the concept of writing testing when I started teaching, and I've read them. And I think there's one in my office. It's about the science of test question writing, but it's written by a
Mhm.
psychometrician out of I think Denmark. But in any case,
Okay.
basically you have to have them pass enough questions in each of the areas to show competency. And
Exactly.
there's always going to be questions that are tiered differently. So some of the questions are, if you want to use the ABC technician, I hate that, but well, we'll use it because it's in the industry. Some questions are C-level questions. They're super easy because everybody should know that. And they
Right.
don't,
Like, I don't have a picture of, like, a dial indicator. What is this?
or yeah, it could be that
Very, very
simple.
simple stuff.
It could be
Yeah.
really simple stuff. And then there's questions that are B level, that are tiered higher. And then there's stuff that's tiered even higher yet. They want to see a person pass a smattering of all of those. The test is devised in such a way that you need to pass some of the high level ones in addition to maybe all of the C level and some of the B level to get a pass out of the test. Anyway,
That
guys
makes
go,
sense. I mean, that it really follows. I mean, it really is it needs to be that way.
yeah, and you go into the concept of, well, a technician should get 100%. And I'm sure there are techs that can get 100% on the test, but it is highly improbable that every technician could. And part of that is everybody's experience is different. This is what I was going to say, that is why I feel that it's improbable. Every technician's experience is different, meaning what exactly they work on every day in their
Mhm.
area. So while maybe in my area I get a lot of ABS failures with ABS modules because of rust and corrosion and
Sure.
blue greens, pus in the wires,
Broken
broken.
broken reluctor wheels,
Yeah,
all the other
magnets
stuff that
popped
comes along.
off
Yep.
because of rust jacking.
Yep.
You go down south, they're not going to see those same problems at all. Maybe once a year if somebody from up north comes down there, but it's not like it doesn't become memory every day. So if they get a question that's about something like that on a test, they might they're going to miss it because they don't know. Now, on the other hand, if it's a question about something that only is seen in the south because of high heat, I might not see it up here. I might miss that question. And they're
Right.
both legitimate questions. They're both legitimate concepts that are being tested, but they only maybe don't all exist in the same area of the country.
Exactly. I mean, the another, point to that could be like a technician that's, like, stuck in this loop of doing a whole bunch of recalls on something that seems like that's all they do. And I've talked to people in the industry that's been at a dealership where 2 or 3 cars a day is that same recall. And then if they're tied up on that, and said some of these places, they recall 100,000 cars at a time, nationwide, that's a lot of cars that need fixed. So that, like you're saying, it takes up for that little bit of a marginal area that they may not even be able to answer that question in.
They may have never seen whatever it is that question's talking about. Maybe they saw it if they went to a trade school, maybe they saw it in a lab once. And that's, another thing that I bring up to employers when I'm talking to them about my students. I'm like, hey, understand they've done a couple brake jobs on a
Yeah.
couple cars. They surely have not done a brake job on every style of brakes that might come through the door of your shop. They know how to work on disc brakes. They know a little bit about drum brakes. They understand the concept of air in a system and how to get it out. They know how to
Hmm.
use service data a little bit. Are they really always going to go look at service data like they're supposed to? That's when they come and ask me, I'm always like, go look at service data. But the point is, they are green as grass. Even the ones I've had for 4 years are green as grass. They don't, they may have worked on a lot of customer work, a lot.
Hmm.
I use big air quotes for that because they're in my
Sure.
class for maybe 2 hours a day, five
I
days a
got you.
week. That's not very many hours. Even if you
No.
factor when their first year in my class, they're only in there for an hour a day, 'cause that's how it's set up. It's not even really an hour, it's like 58 minutes.
Sure.
So they're in my class. They we do some stuff in the classroom. They go out and they work in the lab. They do some labs. Some of the labs end up taking 5 days because they're only working on it for an hour a day. And that
Yeah.
whole hour is not they're, they're fumbling around with the locker, getting their safety glasses and all this other stuff. Time they actually get
Exactly.
working on the car, they might only have 40 minutes left. So when they get out into a shop where they're working without interruption, first of all, that's
Hmm.
weird,
Yeah.
because now all of a sudden I don't have to stop. I can just keep going, you know. So that's weird. And I've had them. Some of my former students have told me that's weird, a weird feeling the first couple weeks working out
Hmm.
somewhere. One thing we've done to eliminate that is we do send kids out on internships now at local shops where they'll work
Exactly.
for half a school year or a whole school year for a couple hours in the afternoon and get a feel
Get
for
a
it.
little industry experience.
Yep.
Exactly.
Get out there in a
Kind of like you were
shop.
saying about the GM Yes program that you were in.
Yeah. So GM Yes became a Yes, Auto Yes, or Automotive Youth Education System. And it was kind of all the automakers got behind it, or well, not all, but a larger number. And then it kind of got thrown in ASE's lap to manage, and the automakers bowed out, stepped away, like they often do.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
start something and then oh, that's too expensive, or we don't want to do that anymore. I
Exactly.
don't know exactly what all happened with it, but when I was in it,
Segue. Perfect segue. Let's move to this real quick.
yeah,
How about the Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford's comments previous, and then now his new comments that he's come up with about, yeah, really, I can work on a 73 Bronco, but no one really should be doing their own work on the modern vehicles. That one's hilarious, and especially as it goes along with right to repair. I thought we'd already hashed all this out through the courts years ago when it was about information that was being handed out to the different, many different mom and pops and chain stores. And then, like previous to these crazy statements he was making about, I got 5,000 jobs out there. It's 120 grand a year salary. What's your feelings on those? Because that's just, it's kind of makes me beside myself.
well, I have an opinion on his first statement. I feel that what he said was disingenuous and not flattering to him or his company. If he truly believes that, then he is very disconnected from what's actually going on in his dealerships.
Yeah,
But we have to remember the dealerships are a private entity. They are not, yes, they have, because they're a franchise, there's rules they have to follow. They don't get to pick
exactly.
what special tools they pay for and all that stuff. And they do have to have a certain number of their techs meet certification requirements. But when it comes to pay and stuff, Ford Motor Company corporate has nothing to do with that, as far as I can tell. I don't think that they're coming down and saying, "Oh, you're not paying your guys enough. You need to pay them more."
Right.
So for
There's
him,
a conversation I don't think has ever happened in the history of the world.
no, I can't imagine that it has. First of all, in regards to the statement of $120,000 a year,
Mhm.
that's not even enough money to live on in some parts of the country
That's true.
without a roommate. I mean, if you live in LA, for example, six
Yeah.
figures is low six figures is barely enough to live on. You surely
Right.
couldn't have your own house at that rate.
No. No, it's definitely roommate it's roommate, area.
Yeah,
You're
right.
exactly right.
Now in northern Tennessee or in some parts of Michigan, if you were making that much, you'd be in gravy, obviously. But first of all,
Yeah.
one, the number is kind of ridiculous, because it's kind of a
There's some
generic.
managers that aren't making that.
Yeah,
Like, that's what I was just looking at. I'm like, I gotta make sure that's right. Because in my head, I'm like, "It's like, it's 10 grand a month."
yeah,
That's right. It's 10 grand a month.
yeah.
I'm like, "There's managers that don't make that in some places."
There's technicians that make far more than that at some
Yeah.
dealers and in the independent world. So, but what it really comes down to is what you're paid should be commensurate with the cost of living in the area you live in. So, and I'm not saying that that should necessarily be a glass ceiling. Oh, well, you live in this area, so you can't make more than $60,000 a year. No, no, no. But that should be the baseline should be the baseline should be that you are going to
Market.
make enough money to be comfortable, be able to buy the tools you need to buy, maybe not all off the
Mhm.
Snap-on truck.
Not the sweatshirts.
Yeah, you shouldn't be buying the sweatshirts and the jerky and the sunglasses, folks. Come on.
Well, they should be giving you that,
Yeah.
like, for buying the other stuff. That's
Yeah.
how I always see it. Like,
Hmm.
"Well, give me my pair of socks for Christmas. Let's
Right.
go, man. Let's come up off of this."
Yeah, right. And more, I need more than the little pocket screwdriver. They're nice, but
Exactly.
but
Pocket pry bar now.
yeah, right. You can make any kind of screwdriver into one of those with the vise.
That is true. That's true. Or with one errant pull on the tool.
True. But really, his statement was disingenuous and ridiculous. I thought it made him sound out of touch with the industry and basically like he was just spitballing
Yeah.
in the interview. I would have had a lot more respect if he'd have just stopped and said, I really don't know how our dealer technicians are paid at this point because some of our dealers do it one way and some of them do it another way. I would have to look into that. But instead,
Which is much better than doing what he did,
what he
like you're
did
saying.
is he basically made himself a laughing stock of a lot of people in the industry. I thought
Yeah.
he sounded ridiculous. Now, his statement about
Yeah.
right to repair, him and Mary Barra, they've been on that kick for a while. This is not new.
Sure.
Trump kind of put it out there that they said that to him in a meeting,
Mhm.
and then he made that statement. So obviously it's true. I would believe that what Trump said that he said is probably what he said.
Well, the other thing that's behind all of that too, right? You can look at it this way, and this is how I see it. The dealership and the manufacturer has always been an incestuous relationship.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that's terrible, and I'm only being hyperbolic because it's funny,
Hmm.
but they have been together since the beginning because one has to make sure that the other one stays alive.
Hmm.
So I get it, symbiotic.
Yeah,
You say it that way.
yeah, it's symbiotic.
But
Exactly.
to really put it out there like it's not really driven by that is it's a lie.
Hmm.
Like, just be upfront. Hey, we're here to make sure the dealerships sell our product, that they can fix the product that we sell. And we're really trying to make sure that they don't lose more of the market share. And that would be that's more genuine.
Yeah.
And it's not as damning
Right.
as saying the things that they've said,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, the things they've said are pretty idiotic, and but it to me it shows what's in their heart, what they really. I have long felt like the automotive manufacturers, and it's part of just being a business. They want to
Hmm.
maximize profit for the least amount of input. And I mean, that's any business, I would think. But there comes with having a business like the automotive industry, there should be certain things that are kind of we gotta do's. One of which
Hmm.
is we gotta support our training programs out there,
Yes.
our our entry level technicians, which Ford has done to some extent with their ACES program,
Hmm.
making some of their They're online training available to high school students in high school, and my
Mhm.
students take advantage of that. And
Yeah,
shout out to Tapper Automotive Group in Paw Paw because they support me having aces at my program. They were willing to
exactly.
step up where some other dealers in the area that will remain unnamed said no, and they sponsor our program. So that's cool. And I like it that Ford does that, that they provide their training. The problem is they don't anymore, that I can tell, donate
Mhm.
vehicles to other than their own schools. Meaning, I don't know if Ford still has what it was, it Asset, I think is what it was called, with the Ford Asset
I
program.
think
GM was
I think
ASAP,
so, yeah. GM's ASAP. I
Chrysler was
think
CAP.
Ford is, yeah, I think it's Asset. I
Yeah,
think you're right.
but
The Ford corporate one is
yeah,
called Asset.
yeah, and and GM ASAP schools, they get vehicles from GM, but it used to be that other programs around the state got vehicles too, sometimes handed down from the asset schools, the ASAP schools when they were done
I
with them.
can say I can speak to that one area.
Hmm.
The school that I'd left actually got, 4 Lincoln Mercury, like, Aviators,
Hmm.
that were full hybrid.
Hmm.
So and that was from the manufacturer from what I remember.
Not the
So
dealer.
they did donate them. Yeah, well, I don't think it was a dealer. I think it skipped them
Hmm.
because they had been in flood.
Hmm.
They were flood vehicles,
Yep.
so they're going to be thrown away
Yep.
anyways. And then secondly, the one stipulation that it started out with was like, "Hey, we have to take a Sawzall, cut the roofs off of them so that they can never be in service again, never be driven anywhere."
Hmm.
Because they didn't want I'm like, "Well, that's like, you can't do something else other than rip the roofs off of them."
Right.
And they ended up dropping that stipulation and all kinds of stuff, but that was the place I used to be at.
Right.
That's the only time I've ever seen or heard that, like, the manufacturer supported and said, "Hey," because I think that's a great avenue.
Hmm.
There's a lot of vehicles every year, hail damaged vehicles, problem vehicles, stuff that's buybacks, things that, inherently have issues, whatever, that definitely could be delivered to these schools and be a complete write-off as it's a training vehicle,
Yep.
you know?
And I do know
And
that
I
there's
think
been
that
issues with some schools behaving poorly with the vehicles that were donated.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
there was, I don't know if you,
that's human nature too. That's gonna happen.
I don't know if you heard the story about the Dodge Vipers, but
No, I never heard that story.
apparently some Vipers were donated to some schools, and then somehow
Okay.
one of them got out and did some naughty things out on the road,
Sure.
high speed, and then all the Vipers got taken back.
I see.
And it's sad because one school's misbehavior led to a
Yeah.
bunch of other people being penalized for something they didn't do wrong. But, I've got some cars that were I have, let's see, I'm thinking about it. I have one left that was donated to the Van Buren Tech Center by Ford, and then
Mhm.
Ford, or then the tech center donated it on to me after I went to work there. The only thing I've gotten otherwise from a manufacturer is a demo engine that doesn't even have pistons in it. That was like the engine that sat by
Nice.
the Cadillac in the car show, the North
Sure.
Star prop. I have one of those in
Yep.
my classroom. I mean, we use it for teaching serpentine belts and how to take coil packs on and off and a few things like that.
Sure.
And I teach them how to use a borescope with it. But that's the only direct donation where I got like notified by General Motors, hey, we've got this stuff, we're cleaning a warehouse out. Here's a
Right.
list of things. Write your name, type your name next to the things you want. I put down
Sure.
a couple things and I got that one thing. And then I had to go get it.
Yeah, and then you actually had to go pick it up too, huh?
Yeah, over in Dearborn. But that was a big deal. I actually sent my brother because he had a pickup truck.
Right? Yeah.
But in any case, I think that it would be nice if more vehicles were donated. They don't have to be brand new either.
No.
They could be 3-year-old, program vehicles that are coming back in that have problems, or lemons that got bought back, whatever. I don't care if they have some issues. I don't think any instructor would. But
No.
basically my vehicle fleet that I have is almost all donations from the community.
Mhm.
So I don't have very new vehicles. Now, a lot of the fundamentals can be taught just fine on vehicles that don't have all the bells and whistles. You know that
Mhm.
as well as I do. But the
Yep.
thing is, when you don't have any vehicles that have electronic parking brakes and you get your first customer car in with it, And you have to remind the kids, okay, guys, you're going to put a scan tool on. Remember, I said always put a scan tool on the vehicle first, scan it for codes, do all the things, find
Yep.
out what the procedure is for the brakes in service data. Do we need to isolate the key? What do we need to do here? And that is one of the things we concentrate on is always going and looking at the procedure. I tell the kids, I don't care if you necessarily follow the step by step take the brakes apart procedure, every step exact. What I'm more concerned about is, do you understand that if you don't isolate the key on this BMW, that it could take your fingers off? If you don't retract the rear calipers before you disassemble them, that you can create a huge mess later on.
Yeah.
If the battery
Some
goes
vehicles
dead
certainly can.
in the middle of
Yeah.
the brake job, the computer on the Mazda will forget that you retracted and put it in service mode. And now to get it out of service mode, you have to tell it to put it back in service mode, even though it's already in service mode, but it doesn't know it's in service
Oof.
mode. Yeah, we had one like that this last year. It was a
Yeah.
fun adventure after school.
I was going to say that's got to be tough.
Yeah, and the kid was freaking out. You know, his battery was junk. But if we'd have put a
Hmm.
maintainer on it, it would have been no issue. So we added that to our list of reasons that's posted on the wall of what vehicles need to have a maintainer. You're going to scan it, it gets a maintainer. If you're going to retract the brakes, it gets a maintainer.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I think
Yeah. I
that,
mean, you got to have that.
back to what he said about that people, DIYers shouldn't be working on these newer vehicles. I
Hmm.
watch a lot of YouTube. I kind of maybe overdo it. I binge a lot of different channels. There are some people on there that have not that are not automotive technicians. They're just really smart people that have channels where they like binge into like lab scope stuff or different types of testing, and then they'll occasionally dig into automotive and do something on a car, and I'm like, they're doing that better than I would do it. And they're not an automotive technician. Why?
Right.
Because they went to the GM AC Delco site and they bought access to service data, or they have the all data DIY version, and they looked it up and they read services and they're doing the job just fine. So this baloney that there's not lay people out there that can do their own. Is there people who do shoddy work on their own cars? Oh, sure. But
Happens all the time, I'm sure.
yeah, it happens with
I
everything.
used to see him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my point was always like, okay, well, they just tried to work on it. Something happened to it. It had to be brought to me for me to look at it. Okay. I'm really happy that they tried to work on it. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I don't, I'm not, I'm not threatened by that. That's
Mm-mm.
fine that they've done that, you know? And then secondly, it's like if it's something that they've torn up, now it's cost them more money. So after a while of doing that, most people are going to say, I don't want to do anything else with that car now. I want to have somebody else that's trained and knows how to work on it, fix it. So it kind of is a self leveling problem that does take care of itself for the most part. Yes, there's people that's damaged their vehicle to a point where now it's unsafe and they can hurt somebody, hurt themselves, all that kind of stuff. But once again, it comes back to like, how many different bolts can they make?
Yeah.
How many different ways can you get them out? Right. Cause like,
Yeah.
how many different times can you put a cover over something? How many different times can they engineer it that it literally has to be one more millimeter somewhere else so that the bolt comes all the way out of it? Like there's tons of different ways that they've done to make sure that average Joe can't work on his own vehicle.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, well, we've done all these things and none of those work. So let's make sure legally
Hmm.
that they can't work on their own things. And it's so funny to me that it spiraled out of the farm implementation, type of areas where it came from with John Deere.
I know.
They're coming out saying, oh no, you spent 200,000 on a combine. We're diagnosing that forever and ever, and it's like, really? You're going to diagnose it forever? At some point, that's going to cost me a lot of money. Like, I think I could probably do it and maybe do it without or do it with, that scan tool. Like, why am I not allowed to try to service something that I paid for? It's my property. And if anything, Western society is built on private property rights.
Yeah.
It just is.
But
And people that don't like that, I'm sorry, but that's the way that it is. Go read some books.
don't you think that some of these big companies like GM and Ford are looking at, and John Deere, since they
Hmm.
came up, because they are the poster child of anti right to repair. Don't you think they've looked at the way like software companies have turned purchased software into a service where you pay a monthly fee,
The subscription.
a
Yeah.
subscription, and gone,
Every everything's a subscription model now,
yeah,
right?
let's make combines and well, we're gonna still sell it to you, but to get it serviced, it's a subscription. And
And honestly, that's kind of where the leasing stuff came in too, because it's like,
yeah.
hey, we can charge way more for this stuff, lease it.
Hmm.
People are going to be, hey, fine, whatever. I'll basically rent the vehicle for 4 years and 70,000 miles or whatever they are. And it's like, that's fine. I'll just drive new every two, whatever. And people have literally just been okay with that. And that's one of the things that probably in my lifetime that I've watched, like with Trump coming out saying, hey, we're going to do the 15-year auto loans. Now they're 10, they're going to go to 15. Let's do a 50-year mortgage. Mort is death, gauge is contract. It's a
Hmm.
death contract,
Yeah.
but it used to be 30 years, or you could do a 15.
Right.
Now they want to do 50.
Yep.
Well, it's going to drop their payment. How about we do something to actually stop the runaway inflation?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Just bring it down a tick.
Yeah.
$5 is something for gasoline for an American to pay is not what we're used to.
Mm-mm.
And I'm not going to say it should be $1 anymore either, because I understand, how economies work, but
Yeah.
I certainly don't think it should be $5.50 for the good stuff either.
Exactly. Well, ultimately, I think what they're aiming at, without saying so, is some kind of a subscription for vehicles. But I also don't think that they understand, or maybe they don't care, that there's going to be people who simply cannot afford to join that game.
Yeah.
I think about around here in this area. I live in Michigan. It's a fairly there's parts of it are fairly depressed, wage and
Hmm.
so forth. But it's also fairly inexpensive to live here compared to some other parts of the state and other parts of other states even.
Sure.
But with that said, there's a lot of people driving what we used to call the $500 car. Now, we all know that
Hmm.
today they're not $500 cars. They're more like $5,000 cars. They're
Yeah. For
driving
used,
these
that's right.
buy here, pay here clunkers because that's all they can afford because they don't have good credit. They can't get an actual loan either from a dealership or from a credit union or a bank.
Hmm.
So they're left with buy here, pay here, and that is a
Yeah.
car model. I don't necessarily like it, but it's there.
Yeah.
And for some people, that is all they have. And, if you make it so that, and here's the other side of the whole, if the dealer's the only one that can do the work, and maybe they're not talking, maybe Farley's not talking about independence. Maybe
Hmm.
Barra's not talking about independence, and maybe they're still willing to sell their information to whoever will pay for it, who can show that they're a professional. And that's a different discussion, I suppose. But even
Hmm.
if that's not what they're talking about, what about people like me
Yep.
who is not working in a shop, but
Sure.
who is perfectly capable of doing my own repairs on my own vehicles? Are you telling
Yep.
me that I can't work on your 2025 EconoBox?
I
Your
think that's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah, your rolling cell phone that has all sorts of stuff on it that is just there to make the car useless in 5 years? Because I think it's like, for a lot of parts, 5 to 7 years is it. And you
Yeah.
think about modules that they've got locked so you can't reprogram them. Some of them, of course, we can get around it by going into the board level, but
Sure.
that means that there's going to be an awful lot of vehicles ending up in recycling a lot younger.
Yes. That's exactly right.
Reuse is always better than recycle. It's
Hmm.
more, it's more, it's more ecologically sound and efficient.
Better. Yeah. As I said, it's better for the environment. Certainly, it has to be.
Because when you have to put in all the energy inputs to grind that car up, crush it, haul it, grind it, separate all the materials, make
Make it
another one,
again.
make it again,
Right.
and then you have to put the inputs in to make it again. That's a problem. And I see like the electric cars coming along, and I'm looking at that going, I don't have the concern that some people do of, oh, the battery packs are going to die real soon and all this. I don't think
Hmm.
that's as big an issue as people think it is. First of all, I know some pretty
Well, and the
smart people.
technology's moving. Yeah, the technology's
Yeah.
moving at a pretty good clip also.
But I know some really
So it's like
smart.
lithium ion itself may not even be a thing in
No,
the next 5 to 10 years.
no.
Might be lithium something, but it may not be lithium ion.
Might be
So
lithium iron. It might be there's some salt uh,
yeah,
salt type
salt battery.
battery
Yep.
that they're working on.
There's the air,
Yeah.
the lithium air battery
Hmm.
now that they're working on. There's a lot of different stuff that's out there. So I agree with you on that part too. In the beginning, I thought that. And my thing too has been like, whoever comes up with the first way to really actually recycle that lithium, that's $1 billion industry. And there's already some people that are talking about it doing it, but like it's $1 billion
Yeah,
industry
they can do it
easily
at
right off
scale.
the ground.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that so my point with that, with the electric cars, is electric cars have a lot less moving
Hmm.
parts. They have a lot
Yep.
less things to go wrong, meaning, and some of the stuff is built more robust. Like the brakes are built with stainless steel components, where the current
Hmm.
ICE vehicles may not have that because they
Yeah.
are,
Mild steel.
they're going to use the brakes more and therefore they're going to need to be repaired on a more regular basis. Well, with that said, if we make it so there's all these modules that can't be replaced, we're basically obsoleting that vehicle in 7 years. And that
Hmm.
logically becomes a bigger problem maybe than gasoline fumes, burning
Yes.
fossil fuels. Because if we don't have the ability to recycle all the components in the car, we can't just crush an electric car like we do a current vehicle. We can't just throw it up on a lift or up on one of those dolly things and go underneath and punch a hole in the gas tank,
Yeah.
drain the oil of everything
Pop the wheels and tires off and stuff it.
and stuff it in and crush it. We got to pull the battery pack out at the salvage yard. So that means they got to be certified to do that. I listened to a podcast out of South Dakota that they have a big salvage yard, and they
Hmm.
talk about that all the time, the different things they have to train on for the electric vehicles. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this from, okay, it's bad enough that we're going to make the ICE vehicles so that they're in 7 years, you can't buy the screen anymore. It goes in that giant TV in the middle. So all the stuff it controls is no longer able to be controlled. You have no HVAC, you have no whatever, some of them even door locks.
Exactly.
And then those vehicles are junk. Now the electric cars, which technically should be able to last longer because they have less
Yeah.
moving parts, they can't last any longer than 7 years because we have the same parts availability issue and the same locking of our hardware so that it can't be recycled over to a new vehicle. And I get it. Maybe you don't want people putting in that used part when you're still making the parts for the vehicle.
Yeah.
That's only if you're actively making the parts, because in a lot of cases they build the cars, a specific model, whatever it is. Let's just say a Ford Escape. They build that vehicle, that model run, and they build so many spare parts
Exactly.
for all the different things. The only time they go back and make more that I know of is if there's a recall and they have to redesign something. Other than that,
Sure.
when they run out of wiper motors, and if that
There's no
vehicle,
revisiting it.
there's a limit, and when at some point the OE parts run out and they're not made anymore because they didn't those parts haven't been being made for 4 years. They were made for the
Yeah.
whatever the span was, and then they stopped and they made so many spare OEM parts, and that's where there's the difference between OEM and OES parts. And I know one of your questions was about parts.
Hmm. Yeah. The availability and how it's been, especially through COVID times, but even now, I mean, there's some places that are still having a little bit of trouble actually gaining, any parts acquisition on certain things and certain cars.
Mhm. Yeah, so the parts issue, just from my little spot here in the auto shop at the high school,
Hmm.
trying to get parts, decent parts. For example, we had a Chevy truck, I think it was a 22, that had an
Hmm.
O2 sensor harness that rotted off one of the heater wires
Okay.
right where it goes into the weather pack. Like right, it was, in fact, it was still in there. Visual inspection did not find it. We were
Hmm.
watching that, we were commanding the heater on and we were getting no current. And we said,
Yeah.
the heater's not working. So
Yeah. Why is it not flowing?
yes, there's not there. I told the kids there's not a circuit. It's not a complete circuit. So there has to be a failure either in the O2 sensor or where else. And they're like, well, in the harness. I said, is the problem in the connector or is it on the sensor side? It turned out we reached up there and touched it, just pushed it up to look at it, get a light on it, and
Yeah.
the wire went blink, and there was the green pus, and we're like, "Oh, okay, full stop."
Yep.
So we went ahead and got a harness connector, but that I called around to the dealer. Didn't Local
Mhm.
dealers didn't have one on the shelf. It was on back, or it was a rear sensor harness, and
Mhm.
they said it was a fairly high demand part. It was on back order. Called my local AutoWare store. They did a big search, couldn't get it from their
Mhm.
GM distributor. Ended up, we finally had to order it off of Rock Auto.
Okay.
They happened to have 2 of them on the West Coast, and it took a week to get. And so we ordered it.
Yeah.
Customer actually ordered it with his own credit card, and then we of course spliced it in and solved the problem. But that was,
Sure.
that was a nightmarish mess because we looked all over the place. We called every
Mhm.
and looked online with our various systems to try to find a part. Nobody had the part,
Yeah.
and it just happened
And
that,
you said that was a fairly new truck,
yeah, 22.
2022?
That harness actually
Yeah.
covers like 6 years. That little pigtail.
Piece you're looking for, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like it was a uncommon part. The other thing I've noticed is like trying to get AC Delco purged from your
Okay.
local independent, or what do you want to call it, your local parts store, commercial
Mhm.
parts store on your commercial account, who normally can get AC Delco parts no problem. They're having a real
Yeah.
problem getting some of these AC Delco purge valves, vent valves,
Fit valves, yeah.
things like that. And there's not any point in putting a pick your name aftermarket. I'm not going to throw any of them under the bus because we all know, but I think one of them flies and has
Yeah.
wings, and then another one
Yeah.
has a big S. But
Yeah.
the
And a
pro,
lot of that stuff, honestly, you should really put OEM back on it anyways.
I
Like, I
prefer.
I always try to tell people, prefer to put the OEM back on always. And if it's way too much money, whatever, like, you just have to understand, caveat emptor, you may be buying something that's actually gonna cause you more headache than actually fix your problem. If you're fine with that, go ahead and do it.
Classic example in September. The
Mhm.
choir director's vehicle was a GMC Acadia, had a check engine light come on, and he was in Chicago visiting one of his relatives, and it ran like crap. Like
Yeah.
he started it up and it was sputtering and stammering and carrying on. So he called me. We'd worked on it the year before and installed a aftermarket purge solenoid for the same problem, not the stuttering and stammering problem,
Sure.
but the light coming on. He didn't have a code reader or anything, couldn't look. So I had him run over to the local parts store and get it scanned and just see what it was. And it,
Yeah.
it was that purge solenoid code again, or a purge active improperly or something like that code. I can't remember exactly how
Yeah.
it was worded, but
Basically working when it wasn't supposed to be
yeah.
on, something like that.
So
Yeah.
effectively, the new purge solenoid stuck. So I just had him pull that plastic cover off, and I sent him a picture of what it looked like on that car, and I said, "Take a screwdriver handle and smack it."
Yeah.
And he
Give it
did,
a
and
tappy tap.
it immediately started running right because it slammed shut and stopped being a big
Yep.
giant vacuum leak and sucking all the
Yeah.
fumes out of the gas tank. So we got it back to the shop the next week, and when we had ordered that part, AC Delco was not available anywhere. Like
Mhm.
we'd gone on Rock Auto, we had looked on, all your different online parts sources, Parts Tech, all
Right.
called around to all of our local dealers. Nobody had one. They were just a shortage right then of that part,
Yep.
and it wasn't available. So I ended up putting on a aftermarket. Won't say which one, because it doesn't really matter because I've seen it happen with pretty much all the aftermarket ones, and it stuck. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They work. They just sometimes stick. So we took it off and hosed it out with some carburetor cleaner and lubed it up with some silicone spray, stuck it back on, the aftermarket one, and let him drive it.
Mhm.
It worked fine for a week. And then by then we had the correct AC Delco one in. We swapped it over. We then stuck that purge solenoid on a student's vehicle because one of my students had one, same vehicle, a
Yeah.
little bit older, but used the same part. So we swapped it on there. And I said, I want you know how to change it really quick if something goes wrong. You drive it. I want to see how long it works after we cleaned it until it acts up. 2 months,
Exactly.
2 months
No kidding.
and 500 miles. And then it did the exact same thing. It stuck open, wide open. So yeah, aftermarket parts quality is not very good. And it's not just electronic
Yeah.
parts. It's brake discs they come in already warped.
Yeah.
They or
That used to be a big problem.
thickness
I've run
variation
into that a
on
lot.
brake discs. More than warping, I think thickness variation. We've actually measured some of the new ones, and we're not buying the cheapest ones we're buying the more expensive discs that our particular provider has,
Hmm.
but it's just a matter of the quality's not there. And the biggest one lately has been drums. There's not a lot of drum
Yeah.
brakes anymore, but if you have an older vehicle with drums, good luck getting a set of drums that are round.
They might be sitting on the shelf for a really long time too. That might be part of that.
That,
Just sitting there
or I think they're
doing nothing.
being transported improperly.
Yeah.
You know,
Ace
in
Ventura.
in the container, and then they get to the port in Los Angeles, and then the truck driver goes
Yeah.
around the corner too fast and it tips over. Then Pepe's comes and stands it back up, and all those drums got slammed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that my couple of my local shops that are on my advisory board, they had gotten rid of their brake plates. And of course, we still have them at school, and I still teach it. And I use it as a teaching moment to teach the kids about run out, thickness variation, and things like that, and
Exactly.
how to use dial indicators, because it's a great way to teach that stuff. More than even
Exactly.
just teaching them how to do the machining, because I know shops really don't do that much anymore, but they need to understand those concepts so that when they see something that's wrong, they can understand why it's wrong.
Yeah, it gives them a better insight into it.
We
That's
ended up
exactly right.
machining brand new drums for these shops because he's like, well, I could order some more, but they're the same brand.
Right.
They're the only brand available for this. One of them was a Ford F-250. What do they call
Hmm.
it? It was a '70s truck, so it was the high truck. Can't remember what they call
The
that.
high boy.
High boy. Yeah,
Yeah, the 250 high boy.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it is a really nice, clean one. Has no rust on it. It's only ever been driven in the summer in Michigan. Used as a farm truck, but only in the summer. Never on the roads in the winter. So it's in really good shape. But the brakes were just trashed. From sitting out in the field and whatever. So they were trying to get it fixed up, and you know how that goes. But
Yeah. Definitely had trouble getting parts for a vehicle that old, I would guess.
yeah, and that's
And getting
another
good
part
ones,
of it.
like you're saying, because
Yeah, that's another issue. Like I I know a lot of shops won't touch cars that are, pre 2000 or maybe even pre 2005 or 2010, and I don't really blame them because
that yeah, that tracks like with the motorcycle industry. Because like forever, any of the motorcycle industry places I used to take my bikes to, there were people that would take them. I'd never had enough money to have a bike to actually fix that at the dealer, but I always heard like 10 years. It was a 10-year cutoff. They didn't take anything that was 10 years old or older for some of that reason, because a lot of that stuff comes over on the slow boat. But it's like they just don't mess with it. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of places that's going to that model where, hey, if it's more than 10 years old and like you're a new customer, we just don't want to deal with it.
yeah, because
The dealership, it's like,
yeah,
I don't want to mess with it.
and I don't really blame people, and I hear guys say, well, I took my 1996 Dodge Ram into the pickup truck into the dealership, and they didn't know what to do with it. Well, yeah, because those guys that are working there never seen that truck. If they
Yeah.
don't have a guy that
It's
has
a
gray in his beard,
anomaly.
they've never
Yeah.
worked on that truck. They don't know anything about that 5.9. They don't know anything about how the a distributor works.
Right.
They're lost.
Yeah. If you say EEC 3 or EEC 4 to them, they're like, I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Are you scared? Right.
Yeah. I'm lost.
Yeah.
I'm lost.
Get a wiring diagram that you have to stretch out of the book like this. If you ever
Right.
Chrysler wiring diagrams, they would fold out in a big long.
They unfolded. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I used to make my own. I would print them off of like Mitchell, and then
Hmm.
I would like tape them all back up, like the meme with the like the Toyota SR5. Like it's got it stretched all the entire wire diagram is the length of the truck,
Hmm.
and they used to tape them on. And we go, look what I have to deal with. Like, yeah, that's I've seen that.
Hmm. Yep.
Sometimes you have to make it that way so you can get a better understanding of it.
Yeah. That's for sure. So yeah, parts availability. and parts quality. I mean,
Mhm.
the availability for older cars is that's been a problem for years. It's gotten worse. They've shortened up the amount of time they make parts for stuff. But also, if you think about it, the the generations are shorter on vehicles too. I mean, if you look at like GM back in the 90s and the early 2000s, they had the what 3.1 and the 3.8. 3.1 became the 3.4. The 3.8 pretty well stayed the 3.8 until they got rid of it. But those are
Yep. Series 2,
long,
Series 1.
yeah. They had different series because they
Yeah, and it
changed
lasted forever.
the base engine, the base mechanical components, those rotating assembly didn't really change much.
Yeah.
So parts
No.
availability was pretty good across all that time. But
Yeah, and they even supercharged 3.8.
yeah, that was
Like, that thing run even factory, it ran really well. And then they threw a supercharger on top of it, put, like, 8 PSI on it, and it run really good after that.
mm,
And they lasted. Like, that was the wild part. They actually could take it, and it probably went from, like, a hyper eutectic piston over to a forged. But even then, it's like, it's not that much more stronger, but, like, they actually run really good. I think they made 245,
they were
245 horse, and which was up, like,
pretty stout.
30 on top of the standard, like, 205, I think is what they were rated at. I think they probably made more than that because a front-wheel drive car without supercharging that would go 20 miles an hour, and you could stab it, and then downshift and burn both front tires
Hmm.
was a pretty good running vehicle in the 90s.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Of course, tires weren't as grippy back then.
that's true also. Yeah, they weren't as grippy.
Yeah,
I think I want to ask you one last question. And this one's a pretty good question. That really speaks to younger technicians coming up through, going and working their first job. And let's be honest, not everybody stays at their first position that they go to. So, when do you think it's time for someone to look for greener pastures? So, are there red flags? Are there things to look for? Is there pitfalls that you might be able to, with the years of experience that yourself and myself have? Is there maybe some navigation things that you could give people some tips on? And it's not really even necessarily fit just in the automotive industry. It could be any industry at this point because most people only stay at a job 4 years. I think that's the average now. It's 4 years.
absolutely. Well, my first job in the first dealer I was in is a classic example of a compounding problem that at a certain point became too much, and I decided I had to move. And so one of the things was when if your facility gets purchased,
Hmm.
this is first of all I'm going to speak about things that are outside influences coming in, and then I'll talk a little bit about things inside that should be red flags. But the first thing is if you're working somewhere and things are good, going you think good, and a new owner comes in and the way the shop feels, facility feels changes.
Hmm.
Priorities change, and I'm not saying priorities change in a good way. They change in a negative way. Suddenly you go from a facility where the service manager has been there a long time, and all of a sudden the service manager has been there a long time and everything seems to be going well. They decide to go sell lifts.
Sure.
Not they didn't get fired. They just put their terminate or their resignation in and left.
Hmm.
And then the shop goes through a litany of service managers, and none of them are good enough. The owner keeps coming back. Oh, this one left because of this reason, and that one we had to get rid of because of that reason. And meanwhile, the car count is going down because people
Downward.
in the
Yep.
community are not confident anymore, even though everybody in the back is still the same at this point. It's
Sure.
still the same techs in the back because the people at the front counter keep changing. The customers are not comfortable anymore. Not all of them.
Hmm.
Some of them are staying because, hey, I want Fred to work on my car. I want Ryan to work on my car. I want John to work on my car.
Exactly.
But some of them are like, hey, they never talk to us. They only ever talk to the person at the counter, and they trust Susie or they trusted
Exactly.
Barry up at the counter. They don't know who these new people are, and that's a red flag. If you've got a business that can't keep front of house management intact for
Hmm.
at least, let's say, a year and a half without
Yeah.
flip flopping, it might not be the best place to be because it's going to affect your bottom line, your pay. Now, if you're on hourly or salary, maybe not at first, but eventually the
Sure.
business is going to have to downsize if they're not bringing in the revenue. Even if
Yeah,
you're,
it'll have to contract.
they're going to have to let somebody go. So
Mhm.
it's better to go on your terms than get told bye bye, I
Yeah, be
suppose.
forced into their terms. That's
Yeah.
true.
So that's one thing to watch for in a dealership because I worked mostly in dealerships when I was working in shops.
Mhm.
The independent I worked for was an old dealer guy when I worked for a guy in high school. Before I went to actually, it would have been when I was like a sophomore that I worked for him. And that was when I was buying my first vehicle. He looked it over with me, an old Chevy square body,
Mhm.
1986. But I worked for him for parts for my truck and the ability to use a lift after hours and do some of my own work there. That's how he paid me. And I was okay with that. I learned a lot there. He was a great mentor too. I would say that Harold Cullum was probably a big part of, he's gone now, but he was a big part of showing me that you can be professional and even on a bad day. 'Cause I saw him
Sure.
when his wife had a major health problem occur and how
Yeah.
he handled that plus dealing with customers was pretty fabulous. But in any case, if you're in a place and they're treating their customers poorly, if they're doing or asking you to do things that are unethical, that don't feel right, like,
Exactly.
put these brakes back together, but they're not safe, but don't write anything down about it. Anything like
Exactly.
that, you need to be greasing your toolbox wheels and getting and finding a new place. And like I tell my students, don't leave until you have a new home, unless it's really
Yes.
bad. I mean, if somebody's, you know, trying to abuse you in some way, physically, or then maybe you need to just leave. But if you don't, if it's not that situation, if you've got time, you're not happy, you're not satisfied, start looking around,
Yeah.
start, hitting the bricks, so to speak, and
Yeah.
dropping off resumes on or whatever it is that those other shops want, and find
Yeah.
out who's
And
hiring.
have a resume and have it updated often. Every 3 to 6 months, you should update your resume.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the teachers at the school where I work, his end of the year routine, and he tells the students this, he tells other teachers this, his end of the year routine is as follows. He goes and looks in his personnel file to see what might be in there, if anything's been put in there that he's not aware of. He updates his resume and he turns in his final grades. That's his process every year. And I think that process is a good one for any employee anywhere.
Yeah, it's solid.
You know, even it's at least do it once a year and be ready if you need to move to some other place. If you're a decent technician, I'm not even going to say you're a genius tech. You're a solid employee who's going to show up every day and a decent technician who can do the job, you will get hired again. You're not going to be without work. There's plenty of work, and that's also what makes me laugh about Farley and some of the stuff he says is you really want all the work in your dealerships when you can't even keep up with the problems you already have that you make for yourself with your recalls. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's say you're working
It's like you made the car.
yeah, right. Let's say you work somewhere and it feels like that everybody hates each other in the place. You maybe you came and interviewed there and you went through the shop and everything seemed okay. The walls are painted, it's bright, and there's nice shiny tools and
Yeah.
equipment around. But after a couple weeks there, you realize that nobody gets along in this shop and there's
A lot of dysfunction.
yeah, and there's all this and that's sometimes hard to spot. It's it's sometimes easy for the boss to have he knows he's got an interview coming in and they're going to walk through the shop or, you know, and he goes out that morning and
Everything's gotta be staged just right.
he gives everybody he buys breakfast to everybody that day and
Yep.
after lunch he comes and drops off ice cream for everybody and everybody's in a good mood that day because
Race tickets for the weekend, for a drag race is close
yeah,
by, all that
something.
kinda stuff, yeah.
And that stuff does happen. I've heard of it happen. I never have experienced that particular thing, but I've heard of it happening from some of my former students. And they worked there when they got schmoozed. And then they realized after this person came to the shop, the boss was hiring another person and they couldn't even feed themselves. Like meaning there wasn't enough
Yeah.
car count for them to keep all of them busy, and now he's gonna hire another guy, and, that kinda stuff, that's something that to watch. If you're in a shop where let's say you're flat rate and there's not enough work, and I don't mean a situation where you're not productive or you're not
Yeah.
organized, but a situation where you get all the work that's assigned to you done, and then you're sitting on the box swinging your feet. I was in that state in the wintertime a few times, because the second town I worked in was a tourist town. So it triples in
Mhm.
size in the summer, lots of work in the summer. In the wintertime, not so much. But if that's happening to you and then they're going to hire another person, that's a red flag. Maybe you need to be looking around somewhere else, because if they're already hiring another person, it either means one of two things. They want to get rid of somebody because they don't like them, and maybe you're that person. Who knows? I don't know. Or maybe you're not. But in any case, they're hiring another person who's going to cut into the pie. There's going to be less pie for you.
Yeah, and if they don't have a plan to grow the pie so that it actually equals itself back out again, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a problem.
it's a problem because, and to me, that's another red flag that you have to look for as a young or even an older tech when you land in a new facility. And that's where too, I think, ask to see some numbers.
Yeah,
You know, what
I think
does
that's fair
what do your
myself.
technicians what is your technicians last 5 months of, or maybe pick a month that is ordinarily fairly slow in that area, and say, hey, I'd like to see some redacted data on, I don't need to see what they're making an hour. I don't need to see that. I just need to see what kind of hours a week are they turning.
Yeah, like a back to school month, that used to be a real wild one in the aftermarket.
Yeah, it was
Like,
in the
you
deep
might as
too.
well hope and pray that you're on, like, hourly and not on flat rate, because in August, where I was at, August was just a throwaway month sometimes, and it was a long month, but it didn't matter because, like, everybody was trying to buy clothes for their kids, shoes, all that stuff, clerical items and papers and pencils, and they were not thinking about fixing their vehicle.
Exactly. Middle
And
of
most of that came
December.
back in October. Most of it came back in October because that was like car care month, fall, it's
Yeah.
coming around. But even then, it's like there's a huge lull, and then there's like a whole bunch of work that's got to be done at that point. So
Mhm,
it just, yeah. I think one that I always liked was, like, I tell people, if they won't let you go into the shop and talk to the other technicians
mhm.
while you're there, like go on a tour, don't commit to anything. Just go there and say, I'd like to tour the facility. And if they won't let you go into the facility and they won't let you talk to techs, giant red flag.
Yeah, it's not that right there, you don't even wanna be involved in. And another thing I think about that situation is if they wanna micromanage your tour, meaning
Yeah.
they're gonna send you around with a minder.
Here's a
No,
stop, and then there's a stop. We have to go over here
yeah,
still. And
yeah, no,
yeah,
that's a red flag too, because they might be directing you, and now the technician or whoever it is that you're wanting to talk to, they may already know they can't say anything to you,
yeah.
because if
They're not at liberty.
they're gonna get penalized by getting their hours cut or something if they speak out of turn. So,
Yeah, it's like you're part of a Truman Show now.
it's too bad that that
I've
kind of
seen those places.
stuff is out there, and it's not just in the automotive industry.
No, no, yeah,
And
it's
that
everywhere.
I also want to kind of say that there is a lot of problems in this industry, but there's also a lot of good in this industry.
Mhm.
The thing is, if you're in a situation that doesn't feel right, where you're not comfortable, or they're asking you to do things that don't fit your moral compass, just find a different place that's not like that. They're out there.
Yeah,
There's lots of good shops around the area. There's some shops that aren't necessarily bad, but they're more on the skeevy side. And then there's the shops that are really bad, like that don't bother to follow any of the laws, the state laws in the area or the federal laws in regards. They don't do anything with safety. They got 900-year-old lifts that haven't been maintained. I heard you talking about lifts in one of your podcasts with somebody else, and it's a pet
yeah,
peeve of mine. So many technicians don't set their vehicles on the locks when they're working on them.
yeah,
And lifts are they are the only lifting device in heavy lifting does not require cribbing to work under.
Yeah.
And the only reason that they don't require cribbing is because you're supposed to use the built-in safety securement locks. They're not just safety locks, they're securement locks. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's a
Yeah. If it's mechanically held in the air and not with hydraulic fluid any
yeah,
longer, that could fail.
yeah,
Now you're 100% accurate. And I know for a fact, I'd be the first one to tell you, I didn't start doing that till I started teaching.
yeah. I
Like
was
I
bad
never
about it
done that
too.
as a technician. And we worked with lifts a long time ago. We worked with single post hydraulic lifts, air over hydro, that that thing would just drop 6 inches at certain times during the day with
Hmm.
a car on it.
Yep.
We worked with that thing.
I had a single
And I know
post.
one place I worked at where I leaned over to set the rack on a rainy day
Uh-huh.
and I would get shocked.
Uh-huh.
Like the building wasn't grounded correctly, and
Yep.
I was getting this back feed of like AC voltage into me.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, hey, can we get somebody out here to look at this? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm like, no, I'm being shocked. Like every time I kneel down on the ground
Uh-huh.
with my knees in the water, like I'm being shocked.
Yeah.
Hands on the ground, knees on the ground. I'm getting like 30 to 50 volts at least.
Yep.
Like I could feel these hertz
Hmm.
coming through me. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Like I was working there. I was in the system at that
Yeah.
point.
Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
my first lift didn't have a lock on it.
Right.
It was a single
I've worked
post.
with those
The
that didn't
lock
have
bar
the
was stuck in the floor.
yeah, I've had the ones that would you could just grab the car and move it side to
Yep.
side because the lock bar was not attached.
Yep. Same
Yeah.
thing. Second week I was there, I hooked a chain on the lock bar, and my mentor
Mhm.
was like, "Well, I don't know if that's going to work well." And I yanked that lock bar up out of the floor. It was bent. That's
Yeah.
why it was stuck down on the floor. Pulled it up, reached down in there, and released the secondary, that's upstop lock, and got the bar
Yeah.
out of the floor and laid it on the floor and set the lift back down on it and bent it back straight. Put it back in
Yeah.
and got it working and bolted it back to the lift and made the lift have a lock again so that it was safe. And that was just kind of ridiculous stuff. I mean, at the time, I
Yeah.
didn't realize how stupid that was. You don't know what you
Or
don't
or
know.
how completely mismanaged and
Yeah.
negligent that
And
it
that
is
shop wasn't
that
managed that badly compared
right.
to some other shops I've seen. But in certain areas, that shop had issues. They did eventually replace that lift with a different lift. And then when another guy left, I ended up moving over to a two-post rotary lift. So
Mhm.
above ground lift. I didn't ever have to deal with that single post, that corner anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, lifts is a pet peeve of mine. And I'll be the first to admit, just like you, that before I became a instructor, I didn't treat them as, and I was taught at the school how to do it properly. I now make
Yeah.
my students go through the ALI Lift It Safely program.
Yeah.
Is that a sure all fix? No. The problem is, and on this I would, to any technicians listening that are experienced and out in the industry, guys, when a young tech comes in, don't tell them to not use the locks. Don't tell them to do unsafe things like bungee cord the lock release down.
Yeah.
Look,
What makes it faster?
you
I've
do
heard that
you
one
in your
before.
bay. They need to learn how to do it safely before
Yeah.
speed comes in. Same with putting
Well,
on lug
you're playing
nuts.
with someone's life. That's the other thing. You're playing with somebody's life.
That car
Like, you
falls.
don't
The best case scenario is property damage. The worst case scenario is somebody gets severely injured, can't ever work again in this industry or any other industry, or gets killed. And it does happen, and it happens. ALI tries to keep track of it. They actually have an algorithm that watches the news for articles. The problem is in a lot of communities, they don't have a local paper. It never hits the news.
Mhm.
An accident like that never hits the news. The local community knows about it, knows it happened, but it never goes
Yeah.
anywhere from that. So there's a lot more, statistically, there's a lot more accidents that get reported. And OSHA doesn't always get involved. It depends on the size of the business and how many
Exactly.
employees they have, whether OSHA ever gets involved in it. So if it's a shop with 3 bays, 2 bays, OSHA is never going to get involved. So it's never going to get logged and reported that way. But
Exactly.
anyway, it's one of those things that now, having taught young people that don't know anything about lifts for many years
Mhm.
how to be safe with lifts and watch them do all kind of crazy things, I have one thing I'll say. We've never dropped a car in my shop. at the school. I've never had a situation where a car almost fell off a lift. And I will say that I'm not saying that to brag because we've had situations where a car was lifted 6 inches off the ground and was totally unsafe. That's as far as
Sure.
it got because it got checked
I
by
was getting ready
another,
to say it got caught.
got caught by our process of another student having to check it. And then they said, "Hey, Mr. Ransom, this ain't right." Then I
Yeah.
get involved and help them do it, get it set up rightly or set up correctly. And accidents happen. Gross negligence is when you refuse to use the safety systems and proper procedures to save a few seconds in your day. Or the best excuse I heard just recently was, "Well, I'm short and none of the locks line up with where my height is." I said, "Well, then get
Got
yourself a
to
block of wood to stand on
I was gonna say you got to crouch a little bit or find some way to get a little bit
or
higher,
lower it
huh?
down lower and sit it on the locks and sit on a rolly stool and do your work." That's
Yep.
fine too. But use the locks because the reality is if it falls and shears a lock, the car's coming over on you or falling the other
Yeah.
way. And again, best case scenario is it destroys the customer's car, damages it, and you have to explain that to the customer. Or it falls and rolls
Exactly.
into your toolbox that you are still paying payments on.
Yeah. And hopefully there's multiple insurances on it because that's another thing that,
Yeah.
man, you could talk hours about that one too,
Yeah. A lot of
because you should
dealerships
have
and
your own insurance on
yeah.
it.
You really need to have your
Do
own
not rely
insurance.
just upon them.
And really, if you're going to go work somewhere, that's another thing you were talking about red flags. If you're working somewhere and they don't have any insurance on your toolbox for if they have something happen in their facility, like a theft or a fire that's outside your control, that's a red flag. You should be looking for somewhere else to be. And a lot of techs don't even bother to check that. That's something that you should ask about in the interview. And you before you sign on the dotted line, you want to see paperwork that shows how much they insure. And if they're insuring your tools, you should expect real quickly after you're there that they're going to want to have photographs and a list of what's in your box
Inventory of the tools. Yep.
for their insurance adjuster. And if they aren't asking for that, then they don't really have insurance on your tools.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a verbal thing. Oh yeah, we got it. It's like you're saying, I think Reagan called it a long time ago, trust but verify.
yeah, and they may not be aware themselves. I know that
Yeah.
we were talking about earlier about the changing the industry guys a little bit, and I remember him saying in one of his podcasts that Lucas, I believe it was, that he went to
Hmm.
his insurance guy and had him come sit down and go through it, and they realized they were underinsured a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Happens to more people than people know.
yeah,
That's
and
true.
it happens with individuals with their own house. So,
Sure.
you know, that's just something to be aware of as a tech, young or otherwise. If you're going somewhere new, things to check into. Is there enough hours to feed you and the other techs in the shop? Are they going to insure your tools? If not, is it going to make financial sense for you to work there and have to pay for your own insurance? So,
Yeah. And in many cases, that insurance isn't that expensive. It's almost like having a renter's insurance,
yeah.
maybe $20 a month,
Well, I have my tools
but it's
insured here at home
certainly worth having. Yeah.
because my homeowner's insurance doesn't cover that many tools. So I have a separate insurance plan for my tools, and whenever I get more than a certain dollar amount additional new tools, I send an inventory change with photographs
Exactly.
and value, what I paid for 'em. Obviously, to some degree, the way I have my insurance plan set up, it's a replacement plan, so they don't
Hmm.
really care about the current value as much. I mean, they wanna
Yeah.
know what it is, but they're gonna pay for whatever it takes to replace that tool from a like
Sure.
brand and quality. So,
Yeah. So that just ties inflation right into it. So that's actually a
yeah.
good plan.
It's an inland marine insurance plan. That's what they call it.
Okay. I think that's probably a really great place to wrap it up, to be
Mhm.
quite honest, Ryan.
Yep.
It's been amazing talking to you. I definitely would like to do it again at some point. Definitely would have you back on. We got tons of things we did not touch on.